Hey folks, welcome back to the Frontier Western Heritage channel. I'm Todd Kessner at the gun range here outside of Bozeman, Montana. And today we're going to take a look at our third pocket pistol in this pocket pistol series. It is the Smith and Wesson No. 2 single action in .38 Smith and Wesson. And so we're doing a jump up. We did the 32 Smith and Wesson, and we did the 31 pocket, 1849 Colt pocket model and percussion revolver. Now we're going to jump up to the 38s and see what kind of power difference you would have had you decided to carry a pocket pistol in .38 caliber. So this particular caliber, I've got a 155 grain bullet. I put 15 grains of 3F Old Ainsford in this case, and I'll tell you that is all this case could hold. Actually, I bulged a couple of them, can't get them in the chamber, but I got that formula from that amount of powder from looking at an old box of .38 Smith and Wesson, and it said it had 15 grains of powder in it, and that was a black powder cartridge at the time. So I did get them in there, dropped it, put the powder through a drop tube, the 2-foot drop tube. It did get it just below the surface, and I had to compress it quite a bit. So I'm hoping that I'll get the same sort of performance we would have got out of original cartridges from the 1800s. But we're going to give this thing a try. And again, a 155 grain bullet with a slight hollow base to it. It's got a very small hollow base that should fill the rifling grooves pretty well and get a decent accurate load out of this. So as we take a look at the Smith & Wesson No. 2 single action and compare it to the size of the Smith & Wesson 1.5, you'll see it is starting to get a little bit bigger. It's certainly not a belt pistol by any means. It's just a larger pocket pistol. But the No. 2 actually came out in 1876 and introduced the .38 Smith & Wesson. And the .38 Smith & Wesson is not anywhere near a relative of the .38 Special. That was a whole different cartridge. .38 Smith & Wesson, it was kind of a cartridge unto itself, but came out and it was called the Baby Russian for the very first issue, and that was 1876 and 1877, and had a very much larger housing for the ejector rod. And that lasted for 2 years, but they still made 25,000 of those. Still a very popular gun in that Baby Russian configuration. But then the second issue came out, and that's the model that we're looking at here, and that was 1877 to 1891, still in the .38 Smith & Wesson, and made 108,000 of those. And the one that I've got here looks like it's probably, best I can tell, about 1887, 1888. So toward the end of the run. And it was in production concurrently with the Smith & Wesson 1.5 and 32. So you could have had a 32 or you could have had the 38. And there actually was a third issue that I don't have. That one went from 1891 to 1911 with 26,000 of those made, and the difference was that one had a trigger guard. It wasn't a spur trigger like this particular gun. So the original number 2 was a 32 rimfire. They called this the No. 2 single action. It's a central fire gun in .38 Smith & Wesson, so a good advancement as far as having that rimfire to the center fire cartridge. And it was a cartridge that lived for a long time. The British military even put it in some of their revolvers at 200 grain with 200 grain bullet. So I'm going to go ahead and load this thing up. Again, it's a 5-shot single action .38 Smith & Wesson, and on the market as early as 1877 with that first issue. So I got a few cartridges here. Let's put in a cylinder full. Be a very handy gun to have in a pocket. I just like how solid this one, even this one as an antique. Very solid action, and the cylinder doesn't lock until I pull the hammer back, and it's locked when the hammer is all the way down on the firing pin or at full cock, but not necessarily here at half cock, so it just spins. Let me get my earplugs in, and let's see what we've got for some velocity measurements as well, so we can see what the energy of this .38 Smith & Wesson would have been. Okay, everything's good. Earplugs are in. I'm going to put this thing, make sure it locked in, and it did. Let's see what we've got here. And unfortunately, I did not get a reading. I made an adjustment here on the chronograph, and let's see if we can get a reading off of this next shot. Let's try her again. All right, so we did not get a reading off of that very first shot, made an adjustment. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up, dump these guys out. I'm going to put in one more round, see if we can't get an average out of 5 here. And get this locked up. That's good. See if we can get one more over the chronograph. All right, 417.6. Well, I got to tell you, this thing is fun to shoot. I never shot a 38 Smith and Wesson, particularly with black powder loads that I cooked up myself. Tried to get it as close to historically correct as possible. You'll notice that the bullets are black, so they're externally lubed with like a coating. And not exactly what you would have had in the Old West. You would have, you know, they are pure lead bullets, but you had a lead bullet with a grease groove in it, and you would have lubed it in that groove. So not getting exactly what I wanted when it comes to historically correct load, but as close as I could get. And again, 15 grains that were severely compressed. And recoil wise, really accuracy, the ease of use. It does have a long, hard, well, not really that long, but it is a stiff trigger pull. So that would be the only complaint I'd have with this particular gun. And it might not be the same on every Smith and Wesson No. 2 single action. But for this particular one, pretty stiff trigger pull. You're not going to just touch it and have it go off. So that is what took me a while as I'm preparing to fire, is that and fired in an accurate manner, was squeezing off that trigger, and it's a pretty stout trigger pull. But outside of that, I'm impressed with this thing. This would be a lot of fun to carry around. It's handy. It's got a pretty good bullet mass to it. We'll run the formula, see what we get for energy, just to compare it to the other guns we've done so far. But yeah, it's just a neat gun. You don't feel so underpowered shooting it as I did when I shot the 32 Smith and Wesson, which is a pretty puny round, really. So jumping up to this 38, you've got a little bit more to put in your pocket. Some of them came with shorter barrels. This one's about 3.5, 4 inches, and you could get a shorter barrels. It might be a little bit easier to carry around, but not a bad gun to put inside your vest, an inside pocket on your coat, something like that. Easy to get. 5 rounds of a relatively potent feeling anyway so far. Nice gun, and balanced well. The sights aren't great, but you're not going to, for what it's for, you're not going to be using the sights. It's not a precision shooting gun, although I did hit that plate nearly every time, which is about 30 feet away. So would feel pretty good about having this in my coat pocket, in my inside vest pocket, anywhere that I could potentially hide this gun in an area where I didn't want to be conspicuous about being armed. And as we've said many times, you look at the numbers of a full-sized revolver and 45 Colt, 44 Russian, 44-40, those big guns. They didn't make nearly as many of those as they did pocket pistols. And we're in the millions when it comes to pocket pistols, well beyond what the full-size revolvers were made, the numbers, at least factory-made numbers. And so extremely popular. Again, this one at that 150-some thousand mark just on its own. So again, very popular gun, easy to use, easy to carry. Don't feel underpowered with it. Really anxious to see what we get on those numbers when we run that energy formula just for kicks here and see where we stand. So you've seen this formula several times before, so I'm not going to go through it in the detail that I have in previous videos. But just as a reminder, foot-pounds of energy is equal to the mass of the bullet times the velocity squared divided by our constant. So I took the 5 readings that we had on the chronograph, averaged those out, and came up with 465.04 feet per second as an average of the 5 shots. Threw that into the formula for foot-pounds and came up with, to me, that was a very surprisingly low 69.65 foot-pounds of energy from this 38 Smith and Wesson. And really, with you've watched the video, you know I was pretty excited at the range with it. Really, with the feel of the gun and the larger bullet and the larger powder charge, I was really expecting a whole lot more. So let's compare it to our previous 2 of our tests and see where it stands next to the 32 Smith and Wesson and the 1849 pocket. So going back to our first experiment here, we had this 32 Smith and Wesson, and we had 10 grains of old Ainsford 3F powder in it, 85 grain bullet, and we ended up with 63.4 foot-pounds of energy for that 32 caliber Smith and Wesson. So then we tried the 1849 pocket, and we were able to jump up to 15 grains of powder in that cap and ball percussion revolver with an 80 grain conical, and we got a foot-pounds of energy measurement at 90.8. So a lot more significant than the 32, which is something I would have expected. But then to jump back to the 38 Smith and Wesson, we've got a 145 grain bullet. Unfortunately, a pretty puny velocity, giving us only 69.5 foot-pounds of energy. So in this particular experiment, we are much better off loading a conical in our 49 pocket when we talk about energy than we are going with the cartridge gun, with the metallic cartridge. So to me, something's up here. The bullet's not right. I knew that. The powder was compressed considerably to make it fit into the case. That probably had something to do with the burn rate, I would guess. It wasn't lubed properly. So there's some real questions here. I got a feeling I'm going to be back out at the range with my historically correct, well lubricated bullet without nearly the compression and try this thing again, because this is a very surprising result that my cartridge gun just is not doing well with the same powder charge anyway, with 3F Old Ainsford at 15 grains compressed compared to my cap and ball revolver. So yeah, look for this again. I'm going to have to give this another try. I'm just really curious. So watch for another video here on the 38 Smith and Wesson, and we'll see what we can do better next time. So hope you enjoyed this episode. We haven't been out here in a while. It's just been an incredibly busy month, so I appreciate you guys sticking around and coming back and watching the channel, because I've tried to be as consistent as I could with the twice-a-month drops of new videos, but you know, you got to make a living too. So there's been some events that needed to take precedent, and so we're thrilled to be back out here again. Hope you enjoyed the Smith and Wesson model number 2 single action. Please hit like if you liked it. It certainly helps us with our spread of what we're doing here with other potential viewers. Hit that subscribe button as well, and invite your friends to take a look also. So thanks again for joining us here on the Frontier Western Heritage Channel. Thanks for coming. I'm Todd Kessner, outside of Bozeman, Montana at the gun range.
That was pretty loud.
Yeah, that was a loud one. Oh yeah, you better turn that on.
How do you put your hat on?
You can tilt it back a little bit.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Is it good?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to finish her up here.